Marcus, after 20 years with Cybercore Industries, we're eliminating your position, Director Rachel Kane announced, her tone carrying barely hidden satisfaction. She sat across from me in the sterile conference room, flanked by 2 HR representatives, all wearing rehearsed expressions of corporate sympathy. I sat there, heart steady, waiting for them to finish their performance. What they didn't know was that I'd been expecting this conversation for months. While they thought they were delivering devastating news, I was already 3 moves ahead in a game they didn't even realize they were playing. Little did they know this was just the first move in my master plan. But my advantage hadn't come from intuition or luck. It had started with a single mistake on their part. 3 weeks before that termination meeting, I was reviewing quarterly security reports when an email notification appeared in my inbox. The subject line read, Senior Staff Reduction Initiative, Phase 2, Implementation. I hadn't sent or received any emails about senior staff reductions. My cursor hovered over the message for a moment before I clicked it open. The email thread contained messages between Rachel Kane, CEO David Morrison, and HR Director Patricia Wells. They had been discussing my termination for over a month, mapping out every detail with cold precision. 3 exchanges revealed everything I needed to know about their strategy. The first highlighted their cost calculations. Marcus Chen presents the highest salary burden in the technology division, Rachel had written. Eliminating his position creates 7-figure annual savings, while his current projects can be redistributed to existing junior staff. They had analyzed my employment contract looking for ways to minimize my severance package, with Patricia Wells suggesting they could limit severance to standard minimums by positioning my departure as mutual restructuring. The second exchange was more damaging. David Morrison had written, Marcus developed most of our core encryption protocols, but since everything was created during company time on company equipment, we retain full ownership. His departure actually eliminates our obligation to credit individual contributions. They plan to present my 2 decades of innovations as collaborative team efforts, erasing my personal involvement from company records. The third revelation exposed their broader strategy. The Chen termination completes Phase 2, Morrison had noted. Phase 3 targets Williams in compliance and Rodriguez in systems architecture. Same approach, same timeline. This wasn't just about eliminating me. They were conducting a systematic purge of experienced employees. Rachel's follow-up message made their reasoning explicit. Younger, more adaptable workforces align better with our aggressive growth timeline and budget constraints. My hands remained steady as I continued reading, but inside I felt something cold and calculating taking shape. They discussed my replacement, Jennifer Park, my 28-year-old deputy who I had personally trained over the past 3 years. They intended to promote her into a version of my role while splitting my responsibilities among cheaper employees. I immediately opened a new document and began typing. Every detail, every date, every revealing phrase went into my private record. I saved the file to my personal cloud storage, then took screenshots of each email using my phone. The evidence was damning, but I needed more. This level of detailed planning suggested they had used similar tactics before. Over the following days, I maintained my normal routine while conducting my own investigation. I arrived at my usual time, attended the same meetings, and collaborated with my team exactly as before. Nobody suspected that I was methodically documenting every project file, every email, and every innovation I'd contributed during my tenure. I cross-referenced patent applications with internal development records, identifying dozens of technologies that bore my fingerprints but carried no individual attribution. The irony of their situation became clear as I watched them execute their plan. Rachel Kane nodded to me in hallways, asking about project timelines she already knew would become irrelevant. David Morrison praised my dedication during a department meeting, knowing he had scheduled my termination for the following week. Their overconfidence in their own secrecy was breathtaking. I could have confronted them immediately. Instead, I chose patience. Every additional day gave me more time to prepare, more evidence to gather, and more opportunities to document their continued deception. I watched them rehearse their termination script, unaware that I already knew every word they planned to speak. The email thread had revealed something far more valuable than advance warning about my own firing. It had exposed a pattern of age discrimination that violated federal employment laws. It had documented their intent to claim ownership of innovations they couldn't properly attribute. Most importantly, it had shown me exactly how they viewed loyalty and experience in their new corporate structure. As I prepared for what they believed would be a surprise termination, I realized they had handed me the perfect weapon against them. Their own words, their own discriminatory reasoning, all preserved in digital format, with timestamps intact. But having evidence was only the beginning. I needed to build something far more comprehensive than a legal case. That evening, I sat in my home office staring at 20 years of loyalty that meant absolutely nothing to Cybercore Industries. The leaked emails had made their priorities crystal clear. Experience, dedication, and innovation were liabilities to be eliminated, not assets to be valued. I opened my laptop and began the most important project of my career, building an insurance policy that would protect everything I had created. I mapped every project file to my contract clauses, then highlighted the innovations I'd built off the clock. The most significant discovery was the core encryption protocol that powered Cybercore's primary security suite. I had developed the original framework during company hours 3 years ago, but the advanced version currently in use contained substantial improvements I had created at home. These enhancements increased processing speed by 38% and reduced vulnerability points by half, creating airtight proof of personal intellectual property. My employment contract specified that innovations developed independently, without company resources, and outside work hours remained the intellectual property of the individual employee. I had inadvertently created the legal foundation for claiming ownership of technologies that Cybercore considered their proprietary assets. I spent the next week secretly working on an even more advanced version of the protocol. Every evening after returning from Cybercore, I refined the encryption algorithms using my personal computer and my home network. I documented each development session with timestamps, screenshots, and detailed logs, proving the work occurred outside company premises during non-business hours. The enhanced protocol I created offered performance improvements that would make Cybercore's current system appear outdated. I reached out to Michael Thornton, a patent attorney I had met at industry conferences over the years. Michael specialized in intellectual property disputes involving employee innovations. During our confidential consultation, he confirmed that my documentation would likely support patent applications for the enhanced protocols. We began preparing preliminary applications for 3 separate improvements, each clearly developed outside company oversight. But I wasn't filing these patents just for insurance. I had a different plan in mind. Simultaneously, I activated professional relationships I had cultivated throughout my career. Thomas Mitchell at SecureNet had attempted to recruit me twice in the past 5 years. Sarah Kim at Guardian Technologies had regularly invited me to consider opportunities with her company. Robert Chen at DataShield Solutions had made increasingly attractive offers during industry events. I contacted each of them with carefully worded messages, expressing renewed interest in exploring possibilities. The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. Thomas scheduled a confidential lunch meeting for the following week. Sarah requested a private conversation about executive-level positions. Robert invited me to visit DataShield's headquarters for discussions about their technology leadership needs. Each conversation would occur outside Cybercore's knowledge, maintaining plausible deniability while building concrete alternatives. I began transferring critical knowledge to my most trusted team members, framing the discussions as professional development rather than preparation for my departure. Jennifer Park received detailed explanations of system architecture she would need to understand in her expanded role. Kevin Walsh learned troubleshooting procedures for protocols he had never managed. Lisa Chen gained access to documentation that would help her maintain client relationships during upcoming transitions. These knowledge transfer sessions served multiple purposes. They protected my team from being left unprepared for my sudden absence, while creating witnesses to my actual contributions to Cybercore's technology infrastructure. Each conversation was documented in follow-up emails that established my role in developing and maintaining systems that management planned to reassign without proper attribution. I created encrypted backup files containing detailed records of every innovation, every improvement, and every piece of technology I had developed during my tenure. The files included source code comments proving my authorship, email threads documenting my problem-solving approaches, and timeline records showing the evolution of each system under my guidance. This digital evidence would survive any attempt to revise company records after my departure. By the end of my second week of preparation, I had secured patent applications for my enhanced protocols, established contact with 3 potential employers, and created comprehensive documentation of my intellectual property contributions. Cybercore believed they were eliminating a costly employee while retaining valuable technology. They had no idea they were about to lose both. What they also didn't realize was that I hadn't been working alone. 20 years of mentoring had created relationships that management had completely overlooked. During my years at Cybercore, I had mentored dozens of younger employees who management assumed would automatically side with company interests over personal loyalty. They were wrong. The relationships I had built through genuine investment in people's careers created a network of allies that executive leadership never saw coming. Kevin Walsh had joined my security team 5 years earlier as a junior analyst fresh from college. I had spent countless hours teaching him advanced encryption techniques and helping him navigate complex client requirements. When I quietly mentioned concerns about the company's direction during a coffee break last month, Kevin revealed he had been documenting troubling changes in management priorities. He had noticed senior staff being excluded from strategic meetings and younger employees being asked to reverse engineer solutions that experienced team members had already developed. Lisa Chen in client relations had kept detailed records of executive decisions that prioritized short-term cost savings over long-term client satisfaction. She had watched management reject proposals for service improvements that would have strengthened customer relationships because they required investment in senior staff expertise. Lisa had been tracking client complaints that resulted directly from inexperienced employees handling complex accounts previously managed by seasoned professionals. Jennifer Park, despite being positioned as my replacement, had grown uncomfortable with how management discussed senior employees during planning sessions. She had overheard Rachel Kane referring to experienced staff as legacy overhead and describing their institutional knowledge as easily replaceable through proper documentation. Jennifer understood that accepting my role under these circumstances would make her complicit in a system that devalued the very expertise she hoped to develop. The others across different departments had similar stories. Alex Rodriguez in systems architecture, Maria Santos in compliance, and several more had all witnessed the systematic devaluation of experience in favor of cheaper alternatives. What would you do if your entire network of trusted colleagues offered to stand by you, legally and logistically, when management went too far? The leaked email thread about senior staff reductions had mentioned other targets beyond my position. When I discreetly shared this information with my network, we discovered that Williams in compliance and Rodriguez in systems architecture were both scheduled for elimination in subsequent phases. This revelation transformed individual concerns into collective resistance. We met off-site, encrypted messages ready, each armed with documentation of bias and IP misattribution. Thursday evening gatherings at Martin's Tavern became our planning sessions, where we analyzed evidence and developed strategies for maximum impact when my termination finally occurred. These weren't emotional venting sessions. They were methodical planning meetings focused on documenting patterns of discrimination and unethical behavior. Kevin and Lisa committed to remaining at Cybercore initially to gather additional evidence and monitor management reactions to my departure. Their positions would provide ongoing intelligence about how executives handled the fallout from my counterattack. Jennifer decided she was willing to leave with me if suitable opportunities became available, understanding that her future was limited in an organization that systematically devalued experience and expertise. Maria Santos had contacts at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission through her compliance work. She agreed to serve as the primary liaison for filing discrimination complaints once we had completed our evidence gathering. Her professional credentials and detailed documentation would lend credibility to allegations that might otherwise be dismissed as disgruntled employee complaints. We established secure communication channels using personal devices and encrypted messaging applications to avoid company monitoring. Each ally continued their normal work routines while systematically documenting additional instances of age discrimination and unethical management practices. By the time CyberCore scheduled my termination meeting, our case was airtight. We had assembled comprehensive documentation of discriminatory practices affecting dozens of senior employees, identified patterns of age-based targeting, recorded instances of intellectual property misattribution, and documented management's deliberate strategy to eliminate expensive experience in favor of cheaper alternatives. Management believed they were conducting a routine corporate restructuring. They had no idea they were walking into a coordinated response from allies who had spent months preparing for exactly this moment. Their assumption that younger employees would automatically support company interests over personal relationships proved to be their most critical miscalculation. But having allies and evidence was only part of my strategy. I had also been cultivating a relationship that would transform this termination from a career setback into the opportunity of a lifetime. Robert Chen had been persistent. For 3 years running, DataShield Solutions CEO had approached me at industry conferences with increasingly attractive offers. His latest attempt came during the Cybersecurity Innovation Summit last fall, where he cornered me near the coffee station between presentations. "Marcus, when you're ready for a real challenge, we should talk," he had said, handing me his card with a knowing smile. I had politely declined, citing my commitment to CyberCore, but kept his card in my wallet. The morning after discovering the leaked email thread, I pulled out Robert's business card and sent a carefully worded message. "Robert, I'm reconsidering our previous conversations about opportunities at DataShield. Would you be available for a confidential discussion this week?" His response arrived within 30 minutes. "Absolutely. How about lunch tomorrow at Riverside Grill? Private dining room? Noon work for you?" Robert's eyes lit up when I explained my situation during our meeting. He leaned forward across the mahogany table, his excitement barely contained behind his professional demeanor. "Marcus, I've been waiting 3 years for this conversation. DataShield has been struggling to match CyberCore's encryption capabilities, and frankly, we know exactly why. You developed their core security architecture. Without you, they're running on borrowed time." I outlined my enhanced protocols and the patent applications already in progress. Robert's interest intensified as I described improvements that exceeded CyberCore's current capabilities by significant margins. "These enhancements would give us a 2-year advantage over anything CyberCore could develop internally," he said, reviewing the technical specifications I had prepared. "Their best encryption expert is sitting across from me right now." After 3 meetings, we agreed on the core terms. DataShield would license my off-hours protocols exclusively, hire my entire division on day 1, and put my name on every press release. Robert understood the delicate legal considerations involved in my transition. We established that any intellectual property transfer would occur only after my employment with CyberCore officially ended, ensuring complete legal compliance. My patents for the enhanced protocols remained my personal property, but DataShield would license them exclusively for their security products. Robert revealed DataShield's strategic challenges during our negotiations. "We've been losing clients to CyberCore's superior encryption speeds and vulnerability resistance. Our development team produces solid work, but they lack the innovative thinking that created those breakthrough algorithms." His admission confirmed what I had suspected. DataShield possessed talented engineers, but lacked the visionary leadership necessary to challenge CyberCore's technological dominance. My offer to bring key team members created an opportunity Robert hadn't anticipated. "You're talking about acquiring an entire security division, not just hiring one executive," he said, calculating the implications. "If Kevin Walsh, Lisa Chen, and Alex Rodriguez join us, we gain not only their expertise, but also intimate knowledge of Cybercore's current projects and strategic weaknesses. We developed a comprehensive legal framework with DataShield's intellectual property attorneys. Every patent transfer, every employment agreement, and every non-disclosure consideration received thorough review. The lawyers confirmed that my enhanced protocols qualified as independent innovations developed outside company oversight. Cybercore would have no legal claim to technologies they had never funded or directed. Robert's compensation offer exceeded my expectations. DataShield proposed a Chief Technology Officer position with a 30% salary increase over my Cybercore compensation, plus equity participation and performance bonuses tied to successful product launches. Team members who joined us would receive similar increases, ranging from 25 to 40% above their current salaries. Timing became crucial to our strategy. Robert agreed to wait until after my termination before announcing any agreements or making formal offers to my team members. This approach protected both parties from accusations of employment interference, while ensuring a clean transition. Our final meeting took place the evening before my scheduled termination. Robert presented the signed agreements that would transform DataShield overnight from Cybercore's struggling competitor into their most dangerous rival. The contracts guaranteed employment for my entire team, licensing rights for my enhanced protocols, and public acknowledgement of my technological leadership. As I reviewed the documents, Robert smiled confidently. Marcus, by Monday morning, DataShield will possess the most advanced security protocols in the industry, backed by the team that understands them better than anyone else. With agreements signed, Monday's headlines would change everything. But first, I had one final performance to deliver at Cybercore. I walked into Conference Room B at exactly 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon, carrying nothing but a notepad and pen. Rachel Kane sat at the head of the polished table, flanked by Patricia Wells from HR and David Morrison himself. Their expressions carried that practiced blend of corporate sympathy and barely concealed relief that I had seen in the leaked emails weeks earlier. Marcus, after 20 years with Cybercore Industries, we're eliminating your position, Rachel announced, her voice following the exact script I had read in their private communications. The company is moving toward a more streamlined technology structure. Patricia slid a manila folder across the table with theatrical precision. Your contributions have been valuable, but we're consolidating the security division under our emerging technologies team. I nodded thoughtfully, accepting the folder without opening it. Inside would be the standard severance package they had calculated to minimize their financial exposure. I understand completely, I replied, my voice steady and professional. These decisions are never easy for anyone involved. Relief washed across their faces. They had clearly prepared for emotional outbursts or desperate pleas for reconsideration. Rachel gained confidence from my apparent acceptance and continued with her prepared remarks. We appreciate your professionalism during this transition. Your team will be notified this afternoon, and will need your access credentials and company equipment before you leave today. Of course, I said, maintaining my calm demeanor. What's the timeline for transferring my current projects? This question served multiple purposes. I wanted them to reveal their ignorance about my actual work, while creating opportunities for them to make incriminating statements. David Morrison leaned forward, eager to demonstrate his understanding of my responsibilities. Jennifer Park will assume oversight of your primary initiatives. She's been shadowing your work and understands the core requirements. His confidence was amusing. Jennifer understood perhaps 20% of the security protocols I had developed, and Morrison clearly had no idea about the complexity of systems he was casually reassigning. That makes sense, I agreed. Will she be inheriting my patent applications as well, or does the company plan to handle those differently? I watched their faces carefully as I asked this question. Patricia Wells shifted uncomfortably while Rachel exchanged a quick glance with Morrison. All intellectual property developed during your employment belongs to Cybercore, Patricia stated, reading from notes she had prepared. Individual patent applications will be reviewed and reassigned as appropriate to ensure proper company attribution. This statement would prove invaluable in my upcoming legal proceedings. They were explicitly claiming ownership of innovations they couldn't properly identify or understand. I decided to test their knowledge further. Should I prepare documentation about the enhanced encryption protocols I've been developing? I spoke casually, as if these were routine company projects rather than breakthrough innovations I'd created independently. Morrison's blank expression confirmed what I had suspected. "We'll have our technical teams review all ongoing projects," he said vaguely. He had no idea what protocols I was referencing, yet he was confidently planning to claim ownership of technologies that didn't exist in CyberCore's official project records. Rachel decided to address what she perceived as the underlying issue. "Marcus, I want you to know this decision reflects changing market conditions, not your individual performance. Companies across our industry are restructuring to remain competitive with younger, more adaptable workforces." Her statement was perfect evidence of age discrimination, delivered with corporate speak that she believed provided legal protection. "I appreciate your honesty about the company's strategic direction," I replied, giving her encouragement to continue. My agreement prompted her to elaborate further, digging deeper into discriminatory territory. "Exactly," Rachel said, warming to her theme. "Senior employees often resist new methodologies and technological changes that younger professionals embrace naturally." Each word she spoke would strengthen the discrimination case my allies were preparing to file. Patricia Wells concluded the meeting with standard legal disclaimers about confidentiality agreements and non-compete clauses. I signed the required documents while mentally noting several procedural violations in their termination process. As I stood to leave, I shook hands with each of them, maintaining my professional composure. "Thank you for making this transition as smooth as possible," I said. "I'm sure CyberCore will continue to thrive with its new direction." They smiled with satisfaction, believing they had successfully eliminated an expensive problem while retaining valuable assets. I walked out smiling. They had just proven every allegation I had gathered. By Monday morning, the entire industry would understand exactly how catastrophic their mistake had been. At 9 o'clock sharp Monday morning, DataShield Solutions issued a press release that sent shockwaves through the cybersecurity industry. The announcement was straightforward and devastating. Marcus Chen, former Chief Technology Officer at CyberCore Industries, had joined DataShield as their new Chief Technology Officer, bringing with him exclusive licensing rights to revolutionary encryption protocols that would transform their competitive position overnight. The press release credited Marcus by name as the architect of breakthrough security technologies, a recognition CyberCore had never provided during his 20-year tenure. Within 30 minutes, our stock was up 12%. CyberCore's began to tumble just as fast. Industry analysts immediately recognized the implications. Marcus Chen had developed the core encryption algorithms that powered CyberCore's primary security products, and his departure meant their technological advantage had just walked out the door and joined their biggest competitor. Financial news outlets picked up the story, describing it as one of the most significant talent acquisitions in cybersecurity history. How do you respond when the very protocols you built appear in a rival's patent filings? CyberCore didn't know. The legal implications became apparent by Tuesday afternoon when DataShield's attorneys filed patent infringement notices against CyberCore Industries. Marcus's enhanced encryption protocols, developed independently and filed under his personal ownership, covered technologies that CyberCore had been using in their commercial products without proper licensing or attribution. The patents specifically protected innovations that improved processing speeds and reduced vulnerability points in security systems identical to those CyberCore marketed to Fortune 500 clients. CyberCore's legal department scrambled to respond to the patent claims while dealing with an internal crisis that was rapidly spiraling beyond their control. By midweek, Kevin, Lisa, Alex, Jennifer, and 3 more had resigned. Their departure left CyberCore's security division in tatters, with junior staff who lacked the expertise to maintain complex client systems. David Morrison called an emergency board meeting for Thursday morning as the full scope of their mistake became undeniable. Board members demanded explanations for how the company had lost their primary technology innovator and his entire team within a single week. Morrison attempted to minimize the situation by describing Marcus as a replaceable employee whose contributions had been overstated, but board members had access to the same financial reports that showed security services generating 43% of company revenue. Industry publications began investigating the story behind Marcus's sudden departure, and their reporting painted CyberCore in an increasingly negative light. TechSecure Weekly published an article titled, "How Corporate Short-Sightedness Created Their Biggest Competitor," that detailed the systematic dismissal of experienced employees at technology companies. The article quoted unnamed sources describing age discrimination and cost-cutting measures that prioritize short-term savings over long-term innovation. Client concerns materialized faster than CyberCore had anticipated. By Friday, 3 major clients had contacted the company requesting assurances about service continuity following the departure of key security personnel. Regional Bank of California specifically mentioned their relationship with Marcus Chen and expressed concerns about whether CyberCore could maintain the same level of expertise without him. 2 other clients requested meetings to discuss alternative security providers. The situation deteriorated further when Maria Santos and her allies filed formal complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission alleging systematic age discrimination at CyberCore Industries. The complaints included detailed documentation of discriminatory statements made during Marcus's termination meeting, along with evidence of a broader pattern targeting senior employees across multiple departments. The EEOC announced they would investigate the allegations and review company employment practices dating back 3 years. Rachel Kane found herself defending decisions that had seemed strategically sound just 1 week earlier. She attempted to control the narrative by emphasizing CyberCore's commitment to innovation and workforce development, but her statements rang hollow against mounting evidence of discriminatory practices and poor strategic judgment. By the end of the first week, CyberCore's stock had lost 28% of its value, while DataShield announced they had secured 2 new major clients, specifically attracted by their enhanced security capabilities under Marcus's leadership. The reversal was complete and devastating. Marcus had transformed from unemployed former employee to industry leader directing breakthrough innovations at a rapidly growing company. Meanwhile, CyberCore faced patent lawsuits, discrimination investigations, client defections, and a depleted technical team struggling to maintain services they no longer fully understood. The cybersecurity industry watched in fascination as one of its most established companies crumbled under the weight of its own arrogance, while their former employee emerged as a transformational leader at their primary competitor. The story became required reading in business schools as a case study in how short-term cost-cutting and employee mistreatment could destroy decades of competitive advantage within a matter of days. But this was only the beginning of Marcus's vindication. 6 months later, I stood in my corner office on the 32nd floor of DataShield's headquarters, watching the morning news coverage of CyberCore's latest quarterly losses. The financial reporter described their stock as one of the year's worst performers in the technology sector, down 62% from its peak just before my departure. Through my floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the Seattle skyline where CyberCore's building stood 12 blocks away, its logo barely visible in the distance like a fading memory. DataShield had transformed beyond Robert Chen's most optimistic projections. Our stock had climbed steadily as my enhanced encryption protocols powered security systems for 18 Fortune 500 companies that had switched from CyberCore during the past 6 months. Pacific Insurance Group had been the first major defection, followed by Coastal Financial and Western Manufacturing Consortium. Each client departure weakened CyberCore while strengthening our market position with superior performance metrics and innovation capabilities. Industry recognition arrived in forms I had never experienced during 2 decades at CyberCore. Cybersecurity Today featured me on their October cover as Innovator of the Year, crediting my breakthrough algorithms with advancing the entire field of encryption technology. Technology conferences invited me as a keynote speaker, introducing me as the architect of revolutionary security systems rather than an anonymous team member. For the first time in my career, protocols bore my name and personal attribution. CyberCore paid over $7 million in settlements and saw 3 senior executives resign. Patent violation damages, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission penalties for systematic age discrimination, and ongoing legal costs defending against individual wrongful termination suits had devastated their finances while validating everything my allies and I had documented during those careful weeks of preparation. My success at DataShield created opportunities to help other CyberCore veterans who faced similar discrimination. I personally recruited Thomas Williams from Compliance and Sandra Rodriguez from Systems Architecture, both of whom had been targeted for elimination in subsequent phases of the Senior Staff Reduction Plan. DataShield offered them positions with significant salary increases and stock options that reflected their true market value. Watching talented colleagues escape CyberCore's toxic environment provided satisfaction beyond my own professional advancement. Kevin Walsh had been promoted to Senior Security Architect at DataShield, leading projects that showcased skills CyberCore had never properly recognized. Lisa Chen managed our largest client accounts with expertise that commanded respect and premium pricing for our services. Alex Rodriguez developed new vulnerability assessment protocols that established DataShield as the industry standard for comprehensive security evaluation. Jennifer Park had declined my offer to join us, choosing instead to remain at CyberCore, where she struggled with responsibilities she was unprepared to handle. CyberCore made 3 separate attempts to negotiate my return during the past 6 months. The most recent offer came through intermediaries who suggested a chief technology officer position with complete autonomy and a compensation package exceeding my current arrangement by 40%. I declined each overture politely, but definitively. They had demonstrated their values clearly during my termination meeting, and those values remained incompatible with my professional principles. Looking back at their headquarters from 32 floors up, I felt not triumph, but relief. Justice isn't a flashy announcement, it's recognition. The irony of their situation was not lost on me as I reviewed DataShield's latest quarterly results. CyberCore had attempted to eliminate expensive experience while retaining valuable innovations, but they discovered that expertise and innovation were inseparably connected. Their effort to reduce costs by discarding loyalty had created the competition that was now destroying their market position. My phone buzzed with a message from Robert Chen, requesting a meeting to discuss our expansion into international markets. DataShield was thriving under leadership that valued experience and innovation equally, while CyberCore continued its steady decline under management that had never understood the true source of their former success. And I'm only getting started. The real lesson in all of this runs much deeper than personal vindication or corporate comeuppance. When companies chase short-term savings at the expense of long-term expertise, they eventually learn that you can't separate experience from innovation. My own journey, from getting fired to becoming an industry leader, shows how arrogance at the top can lead directly to a company's downfall. The executives at CyberCore thought they could get rid of me and all my 20 years of hard-earned knowledge, but still keep the innovations I helped create. By trying to cut costs and loyalty, they ended up handing their most advanced technologies and the know-how to make them even better to their main competitor, me. The cybersecurity industry got a hard lesson about how treating experienced employees as expendable can backfire in spectacular ways. Sometimes, the best revenge is just being ready when others underestimate you. Have you ever felt like your workplace didn't value your experience? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, hit like and subscribe for more true stories about corporate karma. After all, you never know when your own misdirected email might land in your inbox.